friend and reading partner, Merle Hansen. I dropped Merle and his lady, Cheryl, science girl, off at the Amtrak Depot, I think, week ago Tuesday. They looked like a couple of kids. They were so happy to be getting out and going. So Merle's not here. I got the whole fort. So why don't we let it rip? This is a brief outline I'm going to try to stick to. Good luck. I'm going to talk, we've got downtown Winona, the block, the foot of Mankato and the Hog Line, East 2nd Street, the Morgan block. The Morgan block, oh my God. The Huff House and the Opera House, and what wouldn't be complete without the so-called red light district of Winona. Supposedly, West 2nd Street was the red light district of Winona, but in fact, the red light district of Winona was pretty much everywhere throughout Winona. So I'll be talking about that. Please don't hesitate to ask me any questions that may pop into your head. I may not have an answer for them. I'll try to make one up. Otherwise, you can torment me later. I'm a big fan of these bird's eye views of the city of Winona and everything else because it gives an idea of, the size of the city, where everything is. Let me see now. This is is this also the pointing thingy? Oh, okay. Crap. You can see it's obviously Winona. And the little blue circle at lower left is an area I call the foot of Mankato because it's down by the river. It is literally the foot up the street. This is where Polish people in general settled in the city in the 1850s and 1860s. The yellow circle, way off to the left, is an area I call the Hog Line. I'll talk a bit about the Hog Line later. And way out on the east, out on the west end, where you see 5th Street, that is the West End Polish community. Today I'm going to be keeping it pretty much downtown. You see where the bridge is, you see where Huff Street is. I'm going to be working there today. And I now have to talk about downtown Winona by the block. The word block in a city can mean one of two things. It can mean like block 68, block 47, block 18, see block 16, block 15. A block is an area in which, cities are marked out. A block can also be a building. It can be a big building. Sometimes it can be a very small building. It's usually a substantial building that represents the people who built it. They tend to be named after the person who built them. Winona's most famous building block, 6 fronts wide, and it was known as the Morgan block. It was built by S.W. Morgan in 1855. And on the turret up there, you'll see the name carved Morgan. This is the Morgan block. These 6 storefronts, which were built in 1885 by Stephen W. Morgan, and became the most prestigious business building in Winona. However, okay. Oh my goodness. I'll get there in a second, Charlie, because it's just unbelievable. You had here on the, businesses, important, the most prestigious lawyers and physicians, and business people, insurance agents. This was an address of distinction. People with money lived up on the top floor. People moved across Winona to be in this building. But by the 1970s, it was urban blight. I mean, there are people in this room I know who saw the Morgan block where it used to be during the 1970s, and everybody wanted to just knock that thing down. The Morgan block sat empty. That whole block, that whole city block sat empty for 4 years because they couldn't decide what they wanted to build on it. But I want you to know that I will be using the, is this the pointer? Thank you. Whoa. Let's give Sam a hand there. Yes, she is that good. Yes, she does literally do everything. And in my little dream world, after I die and stuff like that, I get to sit here in this turret every once in a while and watch it rain. That's how I feel, but we're not there yet. Just keep in mind that a block can be, here we go. Here we go. This is block 16. This is the Morgan, this whole thing is the Morgan block, although strictly speaking, the Morgan block building is just here. Any questions I can answer about that? That's about the only thing I'm going to be teaching you. This picture is incredibly precious. I think it's here at the library or it's at the historical center. It's a sheep skin with an 1857 map of Winona on it. And you can see down here, there's a picture of the Huff House. It was such an important building that they put a picture of the Huff House on the middle of this incredibly precious map of what they thought Winona was going to wind up like. It was divided into blocks. First off, my biggest interest in Winona history is the foot of Mankato. This is something I colorized from a map and used AI to make it look as pretty as possible, because if you go there today, the sawmills are all gone. You get no idea of how it must have looked back in the 1880s. I'll show you how it looked in the 1880s. Today there's really nothing at all going on down here. Trucks, RTP, the levee, nothing. But it was crammed with people once upon a time. They worked here, they worked here, they worked here, they worked here, they lived here. This was their whole little world, right here on the foot of Mankato. And then because I am nuts about these sort of things, what I did was I took a Sanborn fire map and remapped it. Here is the intersection of Mankato and Front Street. Here is Empire Lumber Company. Here is Winona Lumber Company. 4 grain elevators. It's all stacked up with lumber here, as high practically as the buildings themselves. There are 3 separate railroad tracks along Front Street. There are cars being shifted out on Front Street all the time. There are horses pulling wagons. So not only do you have the sights, you have the sounds of bells and steamship whistles and sawmill engines. The smells, coal smoke, sawdust smoke, white pine. I heard what you said, young lady. Can you tell us all what you just said? Horse poop. Yeah. Oh, God, because, they had people to shovel that stuff up, but they all worked downtown. They never got around to the foot of Mankato. And it wasn't just horse poop either, because you had animals of every kind washing around, including pigs. And I said to my mom, she said, "Oh, pigs shit smells way worse than horse." And I said, "Oh, it can't smell worse as in so many other ways, my dear mother was right. Here's Mankato Avenue. Here is 2nd Street. Here is the spot where Officer Vince Kukoski in 1891 pulled a gun and shot down his buddy August Dahmer. Everybody knew he did it, and they still tried to get him busted, get him out of there. This is a 1951 aerial map that I labeled here with the streets. I just get fixated on seeing it over the years from all these different locations. Over here at the corner of 2nd and 3rd and High Forest, this white building here is Kovalevsky's Saloon, the biggest dive in Winona in 1890. The place where they would have parties, and when the party broke up, it was time for the boys and the girls to go out and do the things that boys and girls did after they've had a few beers, all over the alleys and neighborhoods. What a wonderful place Winona was. And work on the Old East End. This is a colorized picture of the Empire Lumber Company. You see the steamboats. You see the shingles. They've labeled the shingles down on the side. It was a happening place. This is the Laird Norton sawmill. I still want to know how they stacked those things up, those huge piles of lumber with no heavy equipment and no safety equipment for $1 a day. The grain elevators, this one kind of freaked me out because in Winona today we have the Bay State plant and that's it. I count 4 of them over here and they're all going. There's smoke and all of the like 6 and 7 story buildings that you never see around here anymore were on the foot of Mankato. Item number 2 to talk about is the dreaded hog line. How many of you have heard about the Winona hog line? Right? Okay, what is the hog line? Somebody want to tell me? Help. Sam. That is one excellent explanation. Here is Mankato Avenue, but you'll see the hog line goes like this. But it is the hog line. I mean, you're right. Mankato Avenue is kind of like the Winona equivalent of the Berlin Wall, because there was east of Mankato and west of Mankato. And if you were a Polish boy from, let's just say, the west end of Mankato, the love of your life is a young lady who lives on the east end of the hog line, what you do is you walk over and you stop at about High Forest Street and you wait for your girlfriend to cross Mankato and meet you for your date. Because if you try to, the guy tries to walk across Mankato Avenue and pick up his date for the evening, he will get the living tar whooped out of him. The idea is that there was a hog line because people did keep hogs, and it wasn't very hygienic. The hog line was associated with Mankato Avenue because people did believe in, you just stayed on your own half of the hog line. The favorite example, the best example, explanation of the hog line is the Swift plant, which started out as the Interstate Packing Company in 1912. You may have had ancestors who worked here. Spoken with whose dad's, okay. Did you get to see it? How did you like it? They used to, I've spoken to several people who, they would have a day where the children of Swift planned employees would come in and see what Dad did for a living. Blood and guts. Yeah, I mean, Charlie will get you through it. But that's why I call this whole thing cheerless pain. On the one hand, you could say, yeah, my dad bashes, pigs in the snout with a hammer for a living. But I was just talking with somebody who, it was you, Mike. You were talking about your grandmother, who, Mrs. Apka, who was just your basic Polish lady who, pinched dimes and nickels and stuff like that. And did what else? Sent sent her children up to the University of Minnesota and bought them a house to live in so they could focus on their studies. These are the sorts of people who work at this sort of place. This is the foot of Mankato. It's a gritty place that lives on to this day and needs a little bit more love than it's been getting. I think I'm done there now. Get to the East 2nd Historical District. This is where I've been having the most fun recently. I show you here a standpipe shot. At the foot of Washington Street stood a giant brick standpipe. Every once in a while, a brave photographer would climb up that standpipe and take pictures of Winona. And sometimes the pictures are a little tilted, but I never criticize because you'd never catch me getting up on one of that standpipe ever. What you're looking at here is the Blooming Grounds building, the post office back then. Church hasn't been built yet, okay? Over here, now, we have what is called the Ely block, but I'm jumping ahead now. On 2nd Street, probably East 2nd Street, the most important building was R.C. Cone Hardware. This building was built in 1863. The Cone family is still here. They are the guy is a chiropractor now. But Cone Hardware Company had been in Winona from the get-go. When they had the Great Fire of July 4th, 1862, R.C. Cone built a new, nice building, 2nd Street. His business improved. By 1895, he now has 2 buildings. He didn't build this one, he acquired it, but business is looking good. And right around 1944, here is a view of 2nd and Lafayette. Over here, you have what is now Pieces of the Past. Okay, are we good with that? This is Pieces of the Past. Used cars, 76 East 2nd Street. Anybody know what building is there today? Who? You're so right. The Acoustic Cafe. For 4 years that I've lived here, I have wandered the street thinking that there's got to be a story here. Here's the Winona Post building, Grace Place. What? Huh. And then this. I just assumed that they knocked out this, right? Knocked this out, right? And built some modern trash in between. That's what I assumed. I find out just last week, that the old buildings, these old buildings are all still here. In the 1940s, the R.C. Cone Company, which owned 3 stories worth of building here, decided we're going to knock the top 2 stories down. They lopped off the top 2 stories. I understand the reasoning. The reasoning runs, nobody's renting them. They have to be maintained. They have to be insured. They're never going to bring in any money. To heck with them. Then they eventually built this spiffy new facade around 1980. I talked with a guy on Facebook who actually was one of the workers. But the foundations of all these buildings are still here. That's why you're also looking at something which is called the 2nd Street Historical District in Winona. It's half a block wide, and that's it. The other building I want to talk a little bit about is the Ely block of 1885. It was another really fancy building here. And it was named after, this guy named Elder Ely. He was a minister in 1854. The people of Winona thought, hey, if we give this minister a block of our new city, maybe he'll come and live in our new city. So block 15 is known as the Ely block. It was given to Reverend Ely. This building was named after Reverend Ely. And it was in 1870 the sharpest, coolest building in all of Winona. Named after the beloved Reverend Ely. But by the year 1900, 30 years later, this was a nest, a worm's nest of courtesans, ladies of the night, play for pay girls. This is the operating headquarters of Winona's iconic Madam Queenie Levac, who was a mother of 3, divorced, or basically just abandoned. She lived here and raised her kids here while doing her job, working in the oldest businessman known to humankind. And the police just turned up their noses because, hey, it happens. If you're going to have a frontier city that frontier people like to come to, this is part of the equation. In 1961, which was a very important, for various reasons, the city of Winona was looking for a parking lot. This is how the city of Winona operated in the 1960s. Please note that I'm not faulting anybody. These are people who loved Winona. They were elected to make wise decisions for the city of Winona. Some of the decisions they made were better than others. I'm not going to judge, but I am going to say that it was a crapshoot. Either these 2 buildings had to become a parking lot, or the other 2 buildings that are now home to the dental school, the children's dental place, and pieces of the past. 2 buildings were going to have to come down to become a parking lot, and it was still a crapshoot. And these are the ones that lost, which is sad. And here's what it looks like today. This is kind of one of the views I just appreciate the most. Here's downtown Dental. Right here was the Ely block. And back behind it was the heart of Winona, the Morgan block. The Morgan block was the second block of that name built by a character by the name of Stephen Whitfield Stemwind Morgan in 1885. The name Stemwind came from this new revolution where you could actually power your watch by turning a little stem as opposed to a key. And because his name really was Stephen Whitfield Morgan and he really did sell watches and jewelry, he really was best known as Old Stemwind. It was in Block 16 of the original Winona City plat. It was leveled in 1972. And as I've indicated before, this whole block 16 stood empty for 4 years. 4-H meetings, tractor pulls, camping events, ice skating. That's how far down Winona got. What I want to tell you, though, is just what an amazing building it was. So here you go, Charlie. Now we're ready to get the Morgan block. It really was that special. This is a mashup I did last year. It's pretty awful. I could do better now. But the intent is to show you where the Morgan block was. Nelson Law Office, that's Windhaven, I believe, out in the back. And these guys are serenading the Nelson Law Office. This is what it looked like. I've kind of chopped off the top of it. Like I said, I didn't know what I was doing. But once I made this picture, I knew, and I now know for good, where the Morgan block is. And sometimes I can even see it now. Here you go, Charlie. I knew you were going to ask me that question, and I was ready for you. This here is the actual Morgan block. It's labeled as Morgan block. This here is the Richardson block. It's just this. It's really not very much at all. This has no name, although it's much bigger than any block. It's all really arbitrary. The most important thing is that if this block 16 is surrounded by Center Street and Main Street. Come down to the Center Street and you hit the left. Come down to the foot of Main Street and you will get the ramp that takes you to the High Wagon Bridge. And second and third are the two biggest and most important business streets of the city of Winona. So this is really, the heart of the business district. Correct. But again, this whole block 16 by the 1970s is called the Morgan block, routinely. So yes, that's exactly it, Charlie. Okay, more questions. I haven't asked you for any questions. I've just been blathering a million miles a second. I just love pictures of this. I mean, there's my turret right over here. This turret belongs to the Richardson building. Here's Blooming Grounds. Choate building is back here. The Richardson block isn't really any big deal. It's just this here. It's nothing really spectacular. You're standing, you have just walked out of Blooming Grounds, and you're looking to your right. You look down Center Street here, and that leads down to the levee. Okay? These buildings are down here have all been knocked down years and years ago. This here is Wisconsin. This is a beautiful drawing that I found somewhere of the Morgan block in the 1960s. And you can see that iconic clock right in the front of Morgan's store. I have no idea what happens to the clock. I sure wish somebody took that clock. The door of Morgan's jewelry store right over here, along with a plaque, are on their current store. Okay, it's either on 3rd Street, 2nd Street, or some other street. And here is a Morgan block that I drew all by myself using AI. When I run out of rabbit holes, then I start constructing stuff like this. We're going to next go to the Huff House and the Opera House to pick it up a little bit. Start out with a couple of buildings that I'm just really fond of. One This is now Herbert and Gerbert's. It was the Slade block designed by Charles Mayberry, and here is the number 2 post office, which was destroyed in 1970. Oh, no, you're right, 60s. It was the 60s. They tried to destroy the courthouse in the 70s. There you go. Over here, you see the Schlitz Hotel, which is where they sold Fidelity whiskey. The whiskey that will be true to you until the bitter end. I have no idea. Here is the Winona Hotel over here. We're moving in that direction. The Huff House was a really, really big deal. When Winona was just the island city, people living in lean-tos and shelters. A Chicago capitalist named Henry D. Huff came and built that. He also built himself a nice, big, huge brick house, which is still with us. The Huff House Hotel was built in 1855 and was demolished in 1889. It was really the heart of Winona's society. When travelers came to Winona, they stayed at the Huff House. When important meetings were held, they're held at the Huff House. And you can see here, it's got the American flag. It is a Winona iconic symbol. 1887, things are starting to, I feel like Tina Turner. Yeah. Hello. Well, then I can put my glasses on. Which, the last time I was wearing glasses and a headset, I was winding myself up into this really powerful point I was going to make in reading a story. And I whipped off my glasses to make my point. And my headset went flying across the room to where Judy and Terry are back there. And I never do that again. 1887. The Huff House has been there for 32 years. Over here at your far right, you can see the new courthouse going up. This has to be 1887. Winona is getting ready to jump and take it to a new level. Right. They took it down, broke it down into 4 pieces, and dragged it off to 4 different corners of Winona. So it could not be sold as a whole building and used as a hotel anymore. That was part of the bill of sale. And if ever you remember, there's a little dentist's office there now at 4th and Market. But that corner building over there was a corner of the Huff House. When it was demolished in either 1970 or some other year, that little piece of brick or what have you there was 125 years old. And it was just a crappy little hotel that probably did need to be knocked down. But to me, it was just more of Winona. And it was wrecked for this, the beautiful Winona, now the Kensington. And you see off there in back of it, in 1892, they built next to this beautiful Winona Hotel, they built the Winona Opera House. Third and Johnson, that's correct. Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah, and if it'll help any, the Opera House is right across from the center. That's where we are now. Yeah. That's when you know you're in really doing well with your knowledge of old Winona. You can look at a parking lot and you know, I'm getting to the point where I know where the buildings were there. That's the old opera house. The idea was that Winona was such a wonderful, prosperous, exciting city. It has this beautiful new hotel. It needs a new opera house. So they put the opera house in. It was designed by Chicago theater architect Oscar Cobb, built in 1892, renovated to become a movie theater in the 1930s, although I don't really know. And then I am told that in its last life, or on its last legs, it was a bar and restaurant known as Emil's. They called it the Opera House? See, these are the things I have no way of knowing, and I'd love to know them. I would think it would be so wild to be watching bands and eating bar pub and dancing and vomiting or doing whatever else you do in a bar here at the Winona Opera House. But there are, always will be two sides to this. The Winona, they called it the Winona Theater, but the Opera House and the Winona Hotel, those were for the rich people. The schlubs basically had to stay at the Schlitz Hotel, which is now Two Brothers Grill. And I don't normally do endorsements. I love their hamburgers. Eat their hamburgers. I'd like to try them all, but I always keep ordering the bacon hamburger or the mushroom and Swiss. I'm also going to try their wings sometimes. But the poor schlubs went to the Schlitz Hotel. Used to have a thing on top of it with an eagle flying, but this was for working people, okay? This had much less fancy rooms or anything like that. There was a two-tier system because in the 1890s, Winona still thought they were growing. Cool. We got about 10 more minutes, and then I can ask you for questions, so I'm coming in on time. I now bring you to the last part, the so-called red light district, the district that everybody in Winona likes to talk about. The fact is that there was a quote-unquote red light district, houses of prostitution, on West 2nd Street in Winona. And in late 1942, early 1943, Governor Harold Stassen of Minnesota, the boy wonder, who is probably best known for running for president in 1948, 1952, 1956, 1960, 68. I don't know if he ran in 1972, but that poor dork was a national joke for so long, always hoping that the lightning would finally hit him. But he did manage to get the red light district shut down. Whether it's because it was going on too long or we had too many soldiers coming up from, Camp Douglas to catch the clap or whatever else, they shut it down pretty good. But the red light district, it was all, it sure was. It sure was. But as long as we've got some pictures, I might as well show you. The famous madams were like women like Jane Bailey is a name that is often mentioned. Leno DuPont was another old-time madam from the fine city of Winona who was a patient of Dr. Lewis Younger. Dr. Lewis Younger was the guiding spirit behind the Winona County Historical Society. And in later years, Dr. Younger reminisced fondly about how he and his client would talk and, well, how's business with you? How's business with you? They were old friends more than anything else. Bottom line, nobody was judging anybody. This is really a beautiful town. It punches so far above its weight culturally. It's unbelievable with events like the Storytelling Festival, the Maritime Art Museum, We've just got the Shakespeare Festival, Great River Shakespeare Festival. We've got so much going on here, but at the same time, this is a really gritty ass, nasty little river town to this very day. And that's the part I really like. Sorry. And the heart of it is here at Second and Huff. Up here at Second and Huff. Ooh, I got to grab my pointer. Where did I put my pointer? Crap. Pocket. Who said pocket? Hey, Roxy, check it out. The railroad station. That hotel. Let me show you another picture. You can see what's going on here. Not there, not there. Here we go. The railroad came along the river and had to make a turn to cross, over the swing span bridge. The railroad literally had to make a very sharp, whatever direction it is, left-hand turn to get across the river. How an engineer could get a steam engine started on that hill from a dead stop is beyond me. But again, you'll see the buildings. This is the National Hotel. Think this is the Union Hotel. This place. Over here was Queenie House, and later on the headquarters of Miller Scrap. Over here is the Tremont House. Over here we have the Washington House Hotel. All of these had ladies who played for pay. The women who played for pay, who were prostitutes, did not cause trouble. They were checked to make sure they were in good health. They went to church and sat in the back rows. They were working people just like everybody else in town. And oddly enough, when they wanted to get out, cut loose, and have a little fun, they went to Wisconsin. What they would do is they would take cabs over to the many fine drinking establishments over in Bluff Siding. Did you hear the 4 miles opened up again? I'll talk about yes, Charlie. I knew this was going to happen. The ladies of the night would spend a night and every once in a while over in Wisconsin, drinking in one of the bars. They weren't rounding up business. They weren't looking for male companionship. They were working people looking for a little recreation in a place where nobody was going to hassle them. And it worked. But for what it's worth, this was a building I didn't even know existed until a couple weeks ago. I'm always learning new stuff about this place. Let's go back here. I wanted to show you this one because it shows you the big curve. It shows you the swing span bridge. It shows you the depot, the recreation bar is here, and used cars. Apparently they used to burn used cars. This is what I was talking about with you, Nancy and John. And I guess they would burn and wreck used cars. There was also a hobo jungle in these cars that will be completely forgotten in another 10 years. Second and Huff, Northwestern Hotel. Okay, we're winding into the short part. This is just about over. Trust me. It was it? I don't know. Let's see what it is. Let's say, was it last week? It was last week, wasn't it, Roxy? When you and I Roxy was over there helping a couple of people, with their genealogy stuff. And I'm just sitting there being obnoxious and making sure Roxy's getting it right. She always does. I know good teaching when I hear it. And we just got started talking about that place. And, oh heck, I'm going to sit down. because I'm leaving that picture up. Let's see. That building was built in 1880 to a design by Charles G. Maybury, Winona's iconic architect, the man who designed St. Stanislaus Basilica, the man who designed and built the Winona County Courthouse, the Odd Fellows Building, the Homer Town Hall. You know, I could go on, the Unger Block. He built so much. He designed this two-story brick building across from the new railroad station for a man by the name of John B. Stovall. John B. Stovall was a freed slave. He was Winona's first black businessman. He brought his younger brother, James W. Stovall, who is much better known in Winona, after his younger brother lost everything in the great 1871 fire in Chicago. Nobody really knows anything about John B. Stovall other than he was a really big deal. I mean, a black guy building a hotel across from the new railroad station is a pretty big deal no matter who does it. Apparently, John B. Stovall took to the bottle. And I am the last person on earth to criticize anybody for that. His younger brother, James, had to have him declared dead. That was the fellow who built this hotel. Just going to close with what to me is like one of the most fun stories of the most enjoyable afternoons I've ever had doing this junk. Roxy and I got to talking about this pub, and she told me she was going to do some research. Next morning, I get a Facebook message, I think we should meet. We met as we usually do, over at Two Fathoms, and I basically took notes. Roxy told me what she found, and I took notes on it for about an hour and 15 minutes. And the fun things I can't even begin to tell you about the fountain pens. What was the one about the fountain pen salesman?
And so, going and we talked to the 2006, they got the local police force on it, they found they were talking about it. And because they got the restriction, they took them in, they took them to the police department, and they were talking about the laws. Well, these 2000 back then, oh, we don't have to know about this law. And the police officer had a little behind, they were sitting in the room, waiting for whoever to see. And there was a watch under the bench. And so they titled the story of the walking watch.
The story. They don't even make robbers like they used to back in the day. And in 1933, at the tail end of the Prohibition, times were tough. It was really tough to make a living as a saloon owner in Winona during the Depression. The saloons all became quote-unquote soft drink parlors, where they sold you a soft drink and, something for you to put in it, maybe that they didn't know about and still got busted for. The owner of they were calling it the Burns Hotel at the time, 279 West 2nd Street. The owner of the place was this woman named Anna Olszewski, who was the kid sister of my great grandfather. I'm really proud of this. She owned this flea bag hotel that she couldn't make any money off of. Her son, she had been married to a bar owner. Her two sons were also saloon keepers. They're just not making any money off of this place. So they decide to go in with a proven money maker. A businesswoman who is known for her ability to make something out of nothing. Queenie Levac. They rented this place out to Queenie Levac. And Queenie couldn't pay the rent on it anymore because the business was that bad. And so they went to court. I have no idea how it got settled or anything like that. All I know is that poor Queenie was out of the business for good. Christina Cross, better known as Queenie Levac, died on February 17th, 1942, most likely of a broken heart. I'm just wearing out the equipment here. Oh, I'm just about done now. And she passed away on February 14th, 1942, and she is buried right next to my great-grandfather's kid sister and her husband. I don't know what the deal was there. And then in 1943, they just shut the whole damn thing down because I don't think it could have gone on without Queenie Levac. Thank you very much for your attention. I'd like to ask you if you have any questions. Go ahead. Oh my goodness. Now, short